we'll go ahead and get started with our content. We're doing basically common questions when it comes to shipping and packaging for suppliers into major retailers. We're always going to have a Walmart kind of emphasis because that's kind of where we got started. But yeah, a lot of this should be pretty universal and it should apply to other retailers, other teams as well. A little bit on the kind of logistics side, but all of this is relevant to suppliers as well, what we're going through today. Alrighty, this is us. We are on the Supplier Wiki team. So what we do is we create this content for suppliers and major retailers, anything to kind of help you iron out the kinks in your supply chain or in your process, just common issues, pain points that suppliers run into, and anything that we can try to help you guys kind of fill out your knowledge. That's really the stuff that we are concerning ourselves with on Supplier Wiki. So that's that. I think we have another slide here about that in a little bit more detail. So we do a lot of webinars, but we also have a lot of ebooks, articles, and other kinds of content as well. Like we have these resources now that we started doing. We have cheat sheets that are very helpful for basically just downloading, and then you can kind of keep it as a resource for your team. So we got a lot of stuff like that out there, and I'm sure that I will be posting more of these in the chat as we go through. And I think in this one we have specific slides where we call out other forms of content that that you may want to be aware of in the future. But yeah, that's us. We want to be a wiki in the truest sense of basically just an encyclopedia for all of the things related to being a supplier. Today, specifically, we're going to be going over some kind of high-level packaging stuff. We'll be covering the FTL and LTL kind of distinctions, right? What are the benefits of shipping smaller size parcel, doing the LTL thing, or FTL if you can, if you have big enough shipments. We'll cover collect and prepaid. Again, pros and cons, what are the benefits there? And then we'll go over a little bit about more of our area of expertise, which is the shipping documents, how those are helpful to regular business practices for suppliers, how those can be helpful for fighting invalid deductions, or really just kind of keeping an eye on your own supply chain and on Walmart's processes, or whatever the retailer is. And then we'll finish with the Q&A session at the end. So some FAQs that we get, we have all of our webinars recorded and on our landing pages for the webinars. We also keep the slide decks on our website as well. So all of these live there, but we'll also be sending them out to the email that signed up for the webinar in 3 to 4 business days as well. So there's multiple different ways of accessing this content. We're on YouTube as well. So that's what I always do whenever I'm looking for an old webinar, basically, is I just go to YouTube and I search it. So that can be pretty helpful as well. And then speaking of questions, we have a Q&A tab and a webinar chat. Sometimes people put questions in the chat and chat stuff in the Q&A tab. And so basically, we just wanted to call out that if you have a more formal question for us about your shipping process or whatever, based off of some of the content we've been providing, or just something that's been bugging you for a while, that can go in the Q&A. And the webinar chat is more for the kind of public-facing stuff, answering questions that we ask or giving feedback or something like that. All of that can go in the chat. All right, and then SupplyPike is our organization that we're a part of, and it got its start in AP deductions at Walmart for the most part, looking at shortages. How can we bring together the shipping document side of things in order to do validity checks on deductions and in order to kind of keep our books tidy? So that's how we got started. But really now SupplyPike is covering a very broad range of revenue loss buckets at a bunch of major retailers. So we're in Amazon, Target, and other places as well. And we're really excited with the growth that's happening there. We're expanding into new retailers, and we're expanding into a bunch of different kinds of revenue loss, and not just revenue loss, but any potential areas or pain points where your shipping document information could be valuable to your business insights. We're partners with a lot of different suppliers, which is probably the coolest thing for us, is that we get to work with really big companies, and we get to work with really small companies that are really just kind of trying to stay in one of these major retailers or trying to break into one of these major retailers. And that's really cool for us on the wiki side of things, because we get to hear basically from people in a wide variety of categories, in a wide diversity of development points and growth points. So all of that is really cool. And that helps us kind of curate content for the widest range of suppliers as well. So yeah, that's that. Melody, take us away.
Perfect. Excited to cover this with you all today. So let's start with some of the packaging basics. All right. So pack sizes, what are they? You can really think of it in three different ways. So you have a vendor pack, which is the outer box. This is what is going to be received at the DC. This is what the person at the DC who is receiving the goods inside of the warehouse, they're going to be scanning, they're going to be looking at. Inside of a vendor pack, you have a warehouse pack. So this is what's going to get broken down and actually put on the shelf inside of the warehouse rather than what is shipped. And it's going to be a smaller grouping of the products inside of the vendor pack. And then lastly, we have the SKUs. So that's going to be the individual item that is going to, or the items that are going to be inside of the warehouse pack that will actually be on shelf at the store. So let's look at vendor packs. Here you can think of it as a master pack or a case pack or a break pack. It doesn't always necessarily mean exactly the same thing, but it will usually be used interchangeably depending on the different context of what you're looking at. So remember, vendor pack is going to be what is actually going to be shipped. We do have the minimum and maximum requirements here on the slide. And really, you're going to be thinking of this as what a supplier is sending to your retailers, a distribution center or fulfillment center. Inside of the vendor pack, you have the warehouse pack, or sometimes called the inner pack. This is going to be the box inside of the master pack or vendor pack that contains one or more eaches. So individual SKUs. And then let's talk about the different pack sizes. So again, I'm throwing a lot of words at you. Let's talk about some of the different definitions. So, sorry, moving some stuff around. So inside of the vendor pack, we have a vendor pack or case pack. This is going to be what is, again, sent from the distribution center or the fulfillment center, and it's going to contain sellable units or eaches. A warehouse pack is actually going to be the box inside of the vendor pack that contains one or more eaches. And then the vendor pack or the break pack is going to, whenever it's called a break pack, is going to be whenever it contains one or more of the warehouse packs. So this is so that you can send different break packs to different stores. So let's think about that in the context of this image. So you can see here down at the bottom where it says break pack, it says the vendor pack is greater than the warehouse pack. So you have these individual, how many times do you think I can say pack during this webinar? But you have these individual boxes that you can actually separate out and send those individual boxes to different stores. So that's whenever a vendor pack is called a break pack, that is what it is meaning, is that you can actually break the vendor pack up so that it can go into different locations and you're not having to send smaller boxes to a warehouse, which, may get lost. For a case pack, the entire vendor pack is going to be filled with what is going to be received at a warehouse and what is going to be shipped at a store. So hopefully that's helpful. Vendor pack, again, can be used interchangeably to mean either case pack or break pack, but case pack doesn't necessarily mean break pack. Okay, next we have pallets. So what does it look like on a pallet? So here we have the language of master pack and inner pack. A master pack is going to be the outer box, again, vendor pack, that's going to hold your products, and it's going to be protecting the smaller packages inside of it. So this also helps in the shipping process because there's fewer packages that need to be handled and shipped in general. And that's one of the reasons why they have those minimum and maximum requirements, is to make sure that whatever is being shipped, things can't get lost. Um, so all of the master packs should be on a pallet or floor loaded inside of a container. And then a pallet is going to be whenever there is a master pack or master cases stacked on top of a wooden frame. So just think of those pallets that you saw, they were really popular like 5 years ago, where everyone was making, like furniture and backgrounds and stuff out of pallets. That's what we're talking about whenever we're saying pallets, is the wooden like carrying devices that people will stack goods on top of, and you'll usually see somewhere behind in a grocery store. And then what is an inner pack? So an inner pack, and again, think back to those warehouse packs that we were talking about. It's a smaller grouping of the products that are usually inside of a master pack, um, vendor pack. Um, all of the products inside of an inner pack really should be the same as the base product. So only one unit of any product, or one SKU of any product. If there's more than one type of product, then the retailers will consider this a kit rather than a pack. So usually, fragile, large, and heavy items, inners will go inside of an inner case. Um, so what does this all mean? What are the things that you need to be considering? You need to be considering how your product needs to be packaged in general. Is it fragile? Do you have a lot of them? Need to only Do the stores only usually need 4 units, but you need to ship it in 8 due to the size? How many of your products can fit on a pallet? And then how is the pallet going to be parceled out from the warehouse to the DC to the store to the customer? So hopefully that's helpful. This is one of the more confusing topics. We do, I think, in the next. Oh, perfect. Next slide, we talk about what the packaging standards are. Um, there's an entire book on it. So go and check that out just to fully understand, um, what is needed here. And oh, this is a fun little interaction I haven't seen in our previous webinars, but comment link in the chat and we'll actually send it to you. That's fun, Peter. Really making you work for it today, huh?
Yeah, just like usual.
Yeah, so sorry. Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about LTL, FTL, and parcel. So what is less than truckload? Less than truckload is going to assume that you as a supplier are only paying for the space that is needed. And usually this is going to be weighing in between 100 to 500 pounds. And so you're not taking up the full truck, you're taking up less than a truck, but you still need to ship things. So what do you need to consider whenever you're shipping LTL? This is usually going to work well for suppliers who are looking for cost-effective ways to ship. So if you're really not shipping enough items and you can't fill up an entire truck, then if you didn't have this option for LTL, you'd be paying for a full truck that didn't have all of the items on it. So LTL is really great whenever you don't have enough product to fill up a full truck. Um, it's good for whenever you're flexible with delivery timing, because typically in less than truckload, the rest of the items inside of this truck will be filled up with another person's or another supplier's or someone else who is trying to ship items. And so you need to be flexible with your delivery times so that because there's the consideration of someone else's goods on that truck also have to be delivered. And so there could be some, maybe not delays, but it's just going to take a little bit longer to get there. And then also for LTL, because someone else or another company's goods might be on the truck, there is a slightly higher risk of damage or misplacement, because you're going to be having people going in, taking those other goods, and either delivering them to a different place or the same place. There's just more opportunity for things to get lost or damaged. So what is full truckload shipping? So FTL is whenever you as the supplier or a supplier is paying for the entire truck with only your product. And typically this is going to be weighing more than 20,000 pounds. So you are filling up the entire big semi full of goods. This is the best option whenever you have lots of volume, you need fast shipping, or you're expecting for there to be, you want less handling. So taking on less risk of assuming that your goods are going to be kind of jostled around a little bit. Okay, what is parcel or package shipping? So this is going to be for smaller, lightweight individual shipments, less than 150 pounds. And this is going to be delivered by carriers like FedEx, UPS, or United States Postal Service. And so this is a really great option for suppliers who are looking to ship individual items. If you're doing online only or direct to store or drop shipment vendors. And there is a higher risk of stolen or damaged products. Just like, just like your good, maybe you buy something from Amazon and it gets delivered to you and someone steals it off your front porch. It's a similar type of concept with using FedEx or UPS. So that's it on the different types of shipment. I'm going to just go back and talk about LTL maybe a little bit more of how this usually works. So typically, if you're going to be using less than truckload shipping, you're going to want to use a third-party logistics provider. So Supply Pike, we actually came from, our company originated from a 3PL called K-Stack. And the idea here is that you go and you ship your goods to a 3PL, a provider that will then they will store it in a warehouse, and then they will be responsible for building these LTL truckloads and shipping them out. And so typically you're looking if you're looking at something like LTL or you're looking at something like full truckload, how you actually create your systems and your supply chain in order to support that is going to look very differently. You're typically for LTL, again, going to need some third-party logistics provider. For the full truckload, you can just be scheduling, full trucks to come and pick up your goods and take it from your warehouse to the DC. So that's just another thing to consider is if you're building out your supply chain and you're thinking about which shipping option works best for me, there's some other steps that you'll need to take to be able to ship either LTL full truckload or even parcel. For parcel shipments, I usually see this working very well for some of the smaller suppliers who are experimenting with new items, let's say to Walmart, like the open to buy. There's man, Peter, help me out here. What is that program that Walmart just did where they have new suppliers come in, you get a golden ticket?
I don't know what you're talking about. An actual golden ticket?
It's an actual golden ticket. The Athletic Brewing Company was part of it a
I
few
think
years
you're thinking
ago.
about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's not.
No, that's not what I'm thinking of. Man,
Sorry.
someone help me out in the chat. Um, but there is a program that Walmart has where they will invite suppliers who don't have distribution with them, and they will people can pitch almost like a Shark Tank style to the merchants of that category, and then Walmart will select a few different suppliers during that time period in order to try to encourage more innovation inside of the stores and give more opportunities to companies that they typically wouldn't. And so what you'll see, and I'm so sorry, you guys, that this name is escaping me because it is a really great program that they do every year, but typically that's whenever we see people using partial shipments because you're only, sending 1 or 2 rounds of goods to maybe 50 to 100 different stores. And so typically that's whenever we'll see in a distribution like Walmart, you'll be leveraging parcel shipments. someone have an open call? Yes, thank you, Holly. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Open call. Look it up. Great program. Athletic Brewing. I actually just, if any of you guys get to go through the XNA airport up in Bentonville, we're located in Northwest Arkansas, and I saw a big spread of how Athletic Brewing, which makes the non-alcoholic beer, they apparently actually got their start at open call, which I had no idea. But very exciting. Okay, let's move us along to collect and prepaid. What is collect freight? So this is usually when the retailer is owning the transportation in order, and they will actually retrieve the order. So that means that you as a supplier are in charge of getting the orders ready at your DC for pickup. And then the retailer is going to be paying for all of the transportation fees and charges, including any of the just accessorial or the related fees. And then the retailer is actually taking ownership of the product at the supplier's facility. So let's take a step back. Collect means that you, as a supplier, you're just getting the goods ready. The retailer comes and picks it up, and they own it after they pick it up. So they're paying for it. They accept any damages that may occur from that point forward. And so typically, if you are a collect supplier, your goods, the price that you give, say Walmart or whatever retailer, is going to be lower than if you are a prepaid supplier, which is the alternative. And we'll get here in a second, because you are giving them a lower price because you're not having to pay for any of the transportation. You're not having to pay for any of the risk or take on any of that risk once it gets picked up. So there's a few pros of collect freight. So you're not responsible for any of the poor delivery performance. You're only responsible for making sure your orders are complete and ready by your appointment time on your purchase order. You're offloading a lot of the work onto the retailer or onto your customer because you're not in charge of shipping. There's that other cost of time where your customer is doing all of the work. You're not having to dedicate resources to make sure that it's arriving on time, and all of everything that goes behind making sure something is transported correctly. And then your transportation costs do not fluctuate. You're locking in your transportation terms with your customer, usually annually, which removes a lot of those variables and shipping costs. I will say there is one caveat to this. Walmart, using a lot of Walmart examples today, but Walmart especially just released a program that they will do fuel surcharges if you are collect, just to help negate some of that cost of the fluctuation in transportation in general. We do have an article in that. I wonder if Peter would be kind to send the article in the chat, but I won't hold you to it, Peter. So what are the cons of collect freight? So you're not in control. That means that you're not in control of the costs, the shipping times, the carriers, the compliance, any of that. Thankfully, usually you don't have to worry about that if you're collect. As I mentioned up at the top, your customers or the retailers are going to subtract the cost of transportation from what they pay you. So that means that you have, if you've locked yourself into a collect shipping method, usually you're going to be locked into that for a year. And even if you're able to find how to transport something more cheaply, then what you've maybe provided to the retailer, they're not necessarily going to give you that flexibility of saying, hey, let me ship this item. I can do it a lot more cheaply for you and increase the price on this item. They're not going to let you do that. And then lastly, you lose control of on-time deliveries. So you're responsible for making sure your orders are ready, but you have no control on when they actually arrive at a DC or inside of a store. So this can impact, thinking of long-term costs of this. It could potentially impact your in-stock rates, because you may have gotten the item ready, you did everything that is in your power, but something happened in the retailer supply chain where they have actually been unable to deliver to the store, and now you're out of stock, even though you've done everything that you're supposed to. Okay, what is prepaid freight? So this is the alternative of collect. This is whenever the supplier is responsible for arranging the terms and conditions of getting the products in stores or to distribution centers. Usually you're going to be using a 3PL, like what I talked about with the less than truckload, do delivery on their behalf. And then usually the supplier is paying for a carrier or a 3PL, and you're incorporating that cost into your invoices. So that means that you can charge a higher amount for your product because you are having to pay for the the storage and the transportation and everything that comes along with that. The pros of this is that you're going to be in control. It's your freight, it's your responsibility, it's your choice. You're managing the carriers and determining what order goes on that truck. So say I'm not going to use Walmart example. Say you have an Amazon, a Target, and a Piggly Wiggly deal or order coming in. Now with prepaid, you are able to say, hey, I'm going to fill the entire order of Amazon. I'm going to fill 80% of the order for Target. And I'm only going to fill 30% of the order for Piggly Wiggly because I just don't have enough goods to go around. And you're going to incur chargebacks for that. But there's more flexibility to just decide what goods that you're going to be passing on where. You can also do that with collect. But just the chargebacks that you're going to incur are going to be looking a little bit differently. And prepaid, you can utilize a 3PL or consolidator and let them do the work. This is a really great option for especially smaller suppliers. If you aren't dealing with a lot of volume and you don't necessarily want to invest in a warehouse, invest in and maybe people who can the expectation is doing that kind of warehouse work. You can utilize other services that gives you a lot of choices. And then lastly, you can determine the cost of shipping and pass that on to your customers. As I mentioned in this last slide, the expectation is that you're incorporating the cost of transportation into the cost that you're passing on to the retailer. So the only caveat with this is that if prices go up, then it's going to be very difficult for you to pass that additional cost onto your retailer. Not impossible, but it's going to be difficult. What are the cons? It is all on you. So you need to make sure that your 3PLs and carriers make good on getting the order within the dates listed on the purchase order. So say you've done your part, again, to make sure that the items are ready, but the 3PL or the carrier that is actually picking up the goods from you or from your warehouse, something happens, something breaks, or they're not able to get it to the retailer in time. That's still going to be on you. You're going to have to be the one who is taking on the responsibility of that. You have to be very selective about your logistics and consolidators. So you can't afford, or maybe you can afford it, but you don't want to pay for a carrier who is late or even early all of the time. So making sure that you're selecting the right logistics provider in order to help make sure things are getting there. And then lastly, you have to constantly be monitoring performance. So there's not only the work of making sure goods are on time, in full, there's also the work associated with making sure that things are on time and in full. So making sure you have the systems and again, the people in place so that you can be looking at that performance to make sure that you're adjusting as needed, adjusting your supply chain as you need it. So do you have more questions on collect versus prepaid? We have a supplier wiki article. And once again, comment link in the chat and we will send it to you. Making Peter work for it today. Sorry, Peter. All right, important shipping documents to know. So what are the common shipping documents that are needed for disputing? So for those of you who are not as aware, or maybe disputing isn't in your wheelhouse, we talk a lot about AP deductions, which are going to be like shortage type deductions. or shipping related deductions. Those are the easiest ones for you to actually go and win money back, and they're the ones that are most commonly invalid and easy to prove that maybe the retailer took it in error. And there are some shipping documents that are needed to actually go and win that money back. So for most retailers, you are guilty until proven innocent. So they will just take money from your bottom line or take money from your check and say, hey, if you want this money back, you actually have to go and prove it to me that you shipped what you said you did. And so these are some of the documents that we'll be covering that will help you with that process. And we have a lot of content on Supplier Wiki around disputing and what that looks like inside of each of the retailers. Go check it out if this is something that you're curious on. But let's talk about ASNs, BOLs, PODs, and emails. So advanced shipping notice, or an ASN document is going to provide information on four main levels. So it's going to be the order level, the shipment level, the item level, and the pack level. And it's going to include a variety of different things. So carrier information, tracking number, purchase order numbers, the types of packaging used. It's going to have everything. This is exactly what it sounds like. It is a document that gets sent to the retailer, usually in the form of EDI, or electronic data interchange, telling the retailer that, hey, this is everything that I am going to be sending you, and this is the date that I am sending it. So they can be preparing in their systems and in their warehouse for the goods that you are shipping to them. Next, we have a bill of lading. This is actually a legal agreement or a receipt or a title of all of the goods that are on for each of the POs. So typically, this is going to have a written description of the item. It's going to have the party responsible for payment, the quantity, and the packaging of the items. It's going to have all of that in here, and you can actually see it down in the bottom. This is typically what it's going to look like. Bill of lading. This document is really helpful because it is, yeah, your receipt of from the retailer, whoever you're shipping this to say, hey, this is how many goods that I actually received, versus you saying, well, I shipped you 30 and you're saying you only received 20. Where's the disconnect? Maybe things got broken, maybe things got lost. But that receipt is the actual like legal contract to say, the bill of lading is that receipt to say, hey, this is how many goods that I've received. And this is what's going to be very helpful whenever you're going through that dispute process, because sometimes inside of systems, the retailer systems, something will say that they only received 20, but then you go and you look at the bill of lading, it says they received 30. So great document to have just in case in case anything goes wrong. So let's talk about shipper load, shipper count, so SLC. So shipper load, it's a shipping method for suppliers where the shipper is actually receiving the responsibility for both counting and packaging the correct amount of product to ship to the retailer for a particular load. So you as the shipper, you as the supplier are saying, hey, I'm not only going to be the one who is sending you the goods, I'm also going to be the one who I'm also saying that I'm going to sign the receipt at the end. So I don't need you to sign the receipt. I don't need you to sign that BOL. I'll sign it. And you don't have to. Um, so this is typically in collect shipping where the retailer is not held accountable for checking the load and count on the BOL. So this is typically what it will look like. You see those back here. We had trailer loaded by shipper and freight counted by driver or the pieces. Here we have trailer loaded by the shipper and freight counted by the shipper. So shipper load, shipper count. Uh, and as I mentioned in the red blocks, it will say by shipper boxes have been checked in both the trailer loaded and freight counted portions. And so why will people use SLC? Typically, this is going to reduce the time for the product to be picked up. Just because it's easier. You're the once again the freight provider or the retailer is not assuming the responsibility of making sure that receipt is very accurate. Walmart specifically will sometimes request SLC for certain shipments, again, because of how quickly just the process will move, because you as the shipper are having to assume some of the responsibility for it. Drivers may also request an order to be SLC upon pickup, or if they're behind schedule or in a hurry because they don't have to wait for someone inside of the DC to come out and count everything. They'll just say, "Hey, I will sign something as SLC. Can I just leave this here with you, and you guys process it as when you're ready to, and I can leave." And then lastly, it could be an effective way to free up lanes at warehouse locations, just for everything that I kind of mentioned earlier on. One of the things that I will note here for SLC is that it may sound great because you're getting your products picked up, the carriers are not having to kind of like sit there and wait for someone in the warehouse to count everything. But it is very difficult, near impossible with SLC to win money back through disputing. So if you are starting to receive a lot of deductions around shortages, SLC, if your bill of ladings are signed SLC, typically a retailer like Walmart is not going to accept that as proof, because you are the one who signed it, and so they don't have a person or someone on their side who have verified that you actually sent all the product that you said that you did. So SLC, we sometimes caution for people to not necessarily utilize this very often, due to the fact that it could drastically impact your win rate for invalid deductions. Okay. Let's talk about proof of delivery. So proof of delivery, it's typically going to look like a stamp. You can see it over here on the right, that has been filled out with different bits of information. So it's going to include a ship to address. It's going to include the purchase order number. It's going to have basic item information, and then that warehouse or store stamp showing it was received in full, or maybe not received in full. If you're shipping collect, then you're actually not responsible for providing this document. And what I mean by that is you're not responsible for providing that document for actual disputing. This is really only for prepaid suppliers. What are some of the best practices with shipping documentation? So making notes of any damages on the POD or the BOL, ensuring that your product's replacement value is not the same as the retail value, following your proper packaging guidelines. Those are all things that you should be doing. Don't sign a freight shipment without inspecting. Don't leave BOLs unsigned without documentation, and don't wait to dispute damage or short shipments. A lot of this for the best practices are going to be related to those chargebacks or the deductions that might be coming later down the line. One of the reasons why we focus on that whenever we're talking about packaging is it is one of the more immediate effects of shipping and packaging. You can receive a deduction or a chargeback within, just a couple of days of a shipment being received at a warehouse. There are long-term potentially impacts to your business. However, if you're not necessarily following some of the best practices whenever we're talking about shipping. Okay, and now we're doing a live QA. Do we have any questions, Peter?
We do not. So get your questions in. If you have any, Melody, I will ask you to share that again. Yeah, we can put our emails up here too. I think that's the last slide. And if you want to write these down now, just to kind of, if you think you might have some more questions later, or if you want to confer with your team first or something like that. And then if you want to go on to the previous slide one more time, Melody. We've been sending a lot of our other resources in the chat as we've gone along. But here's a little bit of kind of the variety of the retailers that we have full-length ebooks on for if it's more like the shipping and logistics side of things. that you're looking for, there's some of that. But then we also have basically kind of deductions and revenue loss at some other major retailers as well. So definitely go check that out, supplierwiki.supplypike.com. You can also just Google search us too. But yeah, I think that's it for us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It was great seeing you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. See ya.